Welcome to this draw process series where I draw comic book pages and process about my development. Today is page 45 of episode 2 of my comic First Sun and Sword. Okay, I accidentally did not record the initial layouts. I do them right on the comic page, and we have here Farah kneeling down by sword. I wanted to be close enough you could see them. I didn't need a really thorough establishing shot. But I wanted most of their figures to fill the page and mostly fill the page. And then we have more of a close-up of the two of them. And then Sun looking at Farah, Farah looking at him. And then in the last panel, close-up on Farah, giving him a small gesture of kindness, appreciation for what he's done. And he's still kind of pretty tense, pretty worked up. So, yeah, here we go. So this is going to be real time. I did not speed it up. Maybe the first time I've done this where I'm going to do a huge chunk of pencils in real time. I think it's just these two panels. Quick comment on the panels. There's not a lot of panels on this page for me. This is pretty standard though, five panels. I tend to do more and squeeze more in. I'm not quite sure why I didn't. Partly I want the start of the page and the end of the page, everything that's within it from the first panel to the last, to feel good, feel like a good start and end. And this is also a much more emotional moment, like sort of it's about the interactions between them. It's also a resting moment. So these big panels with good close-ups on the face will help serve that purpose. So my roughs are pretty, the rough pencils I laid down, or the layouts, or the thumbnails, but at full size, whatever you want to call them. I'm starting to pencil over them here. And I think I'm accidentally using a different Bristol board than I typically do. I usually use the Strathmore 300 series. There's better paper out there, but it works fine for me, and it's at my local store. But this one was an old Bristol sheet I found somewhere, and I just threw it on there and did it. And I noticed my pencils were coming out differently, heavier for the same pencil. And kind of smudging more. So I think it was the paper. We'll be back to the normal paper next time, but it changed the way I penciled a bit. Everything affects you, how you do it. But I thought it'd be nice for you to see in real time kind of how I approach the pencils. Now, for some reason, this time I was approaching it rather slowly. I felt pretty in the flow. It was not like I was being like super meticulous. It was just flowing out of me. It's just kind of, it's a little more particular though with the construction, the position of the, muscles and so on. You'll notice that I don't complete her figure before I move on to his figure. They are overlapping figures. You're going to be able to see things in this video that you can't see in my other videos because they're sped up. You're going to notice things about the way I'm penciling that you wouldn't notice before. And the way that I'm constructing the arm. Now, I don't have a particular way that I do that. I'm just doing it to the best of my knowledge on the way arms are constructed, and I approach it organically every time. I don't have a set of shortcuts that I use. But partly because they're overlapping, I'm going to jump around the page a bit. My rough underdrawing is so rough that I'm not sure that I'm going to keep them in the position I have them in. So you'll notice, here he's ending up even taller than the underdrawing intended. So I'm just building out the drawing as I go. One of the reasons I hold my pencil loosely like this is so that I remember to do more gesture drawing, more loose, get the idea down. I'm trying to start with loose ideas and tighten it in to the final idea. And to generate these ideas, you need to be approaching it loosely and let it kind of build out. And so for me, that means really messy pencils, really kind of sketchy, scribbly pencils. You'll notice that my strokes are they're very rough and short. And I'm doing a lot with my fingers here. Now in the underdrawing, it's more in the arm and the wrist. And here, there's a lot more of just quick flicks of the fingers. This is the way I tend to draw. I believe this is a good representation. I don't build out the structure of, let's say, like the skeletal structure, the under structure of the figure perfectly, and then start applying anatomy details on top. I'm finding how, where those lines are. I'm finding how his muscle and fat is hanging off of his belly here, and how thick it should be, and where these certain markers might be of like the hip and certain muscle structures. I'm finding where those are going to be as I scribble it in, as I find it. And it's not simply looking at outline of the figure. It is considering underneath the skin. It's both. It's both finding that outer edge and considering, what's underneath that as I go. Yeah. And I don't know, it's possible that I would eventually get skilled enough that I could, in my roundabout way, get to drawing a very consistent approach of starting with the underdrawing and then building the figure on top of it perfectly, and perfectly consistently. But for me, that does not currently work. I didn't approach it that way in my development, and I think the result means more expressive, more dynamic, more loose, more incorrect, but also more expressive and dynamic. There's pros and cons here, and it allows me to develop into my own way of drawing, my own way of understanding the human form, instead of, for example, taking someone else's breakdowns of the human body and applying it, such as the Loomis method. Let's see. Figuring out some of these folds in the clothing. I'm not really worried about shadow at this point too much. And there's parts of their bodies that are not in full view, so I'm not worrying too much about where those are, how they land. And now I'm coming in, I changed my grip on the pencil and I am sketching in some shadows. I'm just kind of figuring out, like, where might I place these shadows to darken in the image, create this contrast from between the figures, from foreground to background, and to light my figures, to give them more form and more sense of being grounded in this environment. And so sometimes I'll sketch those in a bit. They're pretty rough. It's just giving me a general idea. When it comes time to ink, I will actually have to make the decision in real time, no erasing, on where those are going to be. There's a way in which you'll see I make some lines. Sometimes I'll make a few lines. I'll stop and I'll look at it. Does that look like how I think his head would look from this perspective, from this angle? And then I'll add a few more lines if I need to, until I get it. I think lately I've been moving towards drawing slightly bigger hands and feet. My heads are about the same, but sometimes I might even lean a little towards the smaller heads. So part of that is like some classic ideas of beautifying the human form, making them, like 7.5 heads tall, 8 heads tall. This is their head is smaller in proportion to their body, their hands and feet larger. It makes them look more heroic, more epic, whatever. So there's some people whose, figures look maybe 5.5, 6 heads tall. Maybe they have, or even less, 5 heads tall, bigger heads. And now the bigger heads will allow you to show more expression. You can capture more of the face and the expression on the large canvas there if you make heads bigger. But it also begins to be more and more cartoony. So anyways, that's just a comment on that. I do have some guides to draw ovals and circles and so on. I don't bother using them. I just freehand it. You'll see that I drew the figures first. I get a sense of where they are on the ground. And then I draw the ground at the right angle, in perspective, according to the figures. Sometimes I'll draw the environment first, and that dictates the perspective on the figures. But this time, they're substantially making up this image. They're the important thing. I started with them. Putting in the backgrounds is simply a matter of filling that negative space with some lines. Throwing in some stuff. Now, I know what those buildings look like from prior panels. There's the one with the columns right there on the corner, and then there's a few others that are of a different style. I either go off memory or I check a prior page, and I just throw in those elements. And when it comes to, the height of each floor, the height of a window and so on, the width, the length of the building, I'm letting these things change. I'm not worried about it being perfect, being true every time. I'm choosing where to put the windows, the brickwork that's kind of framing each floor. I'm choosing where to put those things according to what looks good and somewhat believable compared to prior drawings of the building, but what will look good, what will create the nice framing on my figures and for the composition, and not create tangents that are weird. So like the edge of this building, I was playing with where does this fall so that it doesn't hit the balloon or the balloon tail. And something I think I will end up doing more of in the future is less detail in some places in the image. So here where the buildings touch the ground, and then you might have, even the ground and maybe some of the stones of the street. If I don't need to add those elements. So there's certain things that are more in focus, have more contrast. You're going to see those, and the other things, they can kind of fade away. Even here, instead of defining Farah's skirt, where the fabric's draping down over her left leg, instead of defining what's skirt and what's leg, they're both in shadow. They do not need an edge. They don't need that clarification. And it creates, nice empty space when you sometimes leave things open like that. If I filled in a pattern of stone on the ground, it would get even kind of messier. The figures would not stand out off the background as well. I'm coming in here, I believe, with a 2H pencil and clarifying the most important things, which is mostly her face, their hands, their face, their feet, maybe their collarbone area. But these are probably the most important points because people are going to be looking at those. They're the most expressive. So I'm double checking those with, and you'll notice even here I hit a little bit of her body shape and the muscles to define them better. So, but this is, instead of going with the same pencil again on top of what I've already penciled, where I might have to press harder to make it show, or you might not be able to see what's my new line versus the old stuff I put down. I just switch to a new pencil. So I'm layering and layering on until I get heavier. And that's my to the final line. And that helps me see which one is, which pencil mark is the real one that I want to remember when it comes time to ink. The way I tend to do things is, study anatomy here and there. And then when it's time to draw a page, I just draw. I do my best to convey what I know, to give things life. One result of that, though, by continuing to study and do that, is that my drawings have become more constructive. They're more geared towards, adding these details. This is taking longer to pencil than it needs to, just to simply, show two figures here, because I'm working out these details that, some people will appreciate, some people will think it brings it to life, but it's extra time. It's just it's moved me in that direction. We're going to move towards what we're interested in. What we focus on will become what we're interested in. I thought I wasn't that into anatomy, didn't care. I started focusing on it all the time, and now it interests me. I find myself just wanting to fill that in. So, I think that's also why I want to start reducing the detail, the things that are the lines that are conveying things in certain areas, especially in the background, or things that are in shadow, is because I've noticed this. I keep moving towards greater detail as I, let's say, study greater detail. And I need to back away from that too, keep that contained so that I don't take forever on pages. This page took 3.2 hours. It's not that long. Surprisingly, I think there's less figures and there's only 5 panels, and some of the panels only have one figure. So it was easier to execute than some of these prior pages with lots of figures and fighting and things to figure out. Even, you could say even more background elements to figure out. Now, I have very little figured out about the position of her eyes and nose and mouth, and you'll notice that I'm going to erase a few times as I'm finding it. I like to draw in this freeing way, where there's not necessarily much there, and I'm just going by feel. I'm like, okay, here's a forehead, here's some eyes. Let's just build it out. And trust that it's just gonna flow out. But sometimes it doesn't work that way. It's also a challenge because I haven't drawn her much in months, and so I'm trying to remember the way she looks. So I might pull up old pages and look at it. And so that makes it harder without some underdrawing to help guide me. So I'm trying to do it in the way I like to do things, this kind of flowing way. And it might end up a little wrong. And if it's too wrong, then I'm going to erase and try it again. But it's also just easier for me, like I haven't worked out in great detail the shapes under her face that I'm going to use to construct her. I do like people that draw that way. I love it. It's very fun. Andrew McLean, Nick Pitara, these are guys that there's pretty solid, shapes that underlie the figure. But along with that comes becoming very cartoony and very well designed, like carefully designed, what your figures are. And it moves away from reality too, because you're going to apply these particular shapes to every part of the figure, their face construction, their head construction. And it can help you have more consistency, but things become more divorced from like an organic reality feeling. Yeah, and that's, it's cool. It's just that's different than the direction I seem to be going. Yeah, this is and my direction is very challenging too. I mean, everyone's is. It's always green. Grass is always greener on the other side, but this is a challenging path. It's very ambitious to draw all of these backgrounds, all of these figures, not really hiding things in shadow and so on, not really hiding anything, just displaying your drawing, and really drawing it. Without a lot of shapes and abstractions. I don't have a thorough design for like his sword, and I don't maintain those shapes perfectly. I just have the idea of his sword, and I lay it down every time with new lines. The same way I scribble out their faces or whatever, I scribble in his sword. That's a unique challenge. But it's the way I want to go. I think it's like I said, it's not having the solid, underdrawing that I use to doodle out the details on top. Instead, kind of doing it constructively, the way I do. It takes longer to get good. I can't just use someone else's method to complete a figure and make it look good. I have to actually observe, and study and draw my way, and just do it 1,000 times before a method emerges that I use. Yeah, and we'll see. But I'm excited to see where things are going. This is this is getting somewhere. I can see the hints of where I'm headed with this kind of expressive and constructive approach here. So, I'm almost done with the real-time penciling. You'll notice I'm finding some shadows here. I worked out some structure, getting the expression. I'm finding the expression. I don't really know. I'm making little adjustments. Like here, I had to add a little more weight to this right side of from his mouth, because I thought about it, and that roundness along the front of the face, it would stick out more there. There's more weight there than at this angle, because originally I was having him more in a full side view profile, but he's turned a bit towards the camera here, and we need to show more around that. So little adjustments as I go, and never perfect, just good enough. I get the expression. I find it. I don't know what I want his face to look like in that moment. I don't even know precisely what they're saying. I kind of think to myself what they're going to say. I know the idea of what they need to, where they need to get to by the end of this page. But in this case, I didn't write what they're going to say until I finished the page with colors and digital lettering. But I had an idea of what they can say in each balloon to make sure that it will fit in the balloon that I drew. Yeah. And now we sped it up. This is more like what you're used to seeing the I don't know what this is even at. Maybe 7 times speed. It might be sometimes these videos are 5 times speed, but this is sped up a little more so that to accommodate the real-time intro I gave you. So yeah, I hope that was helpful. It's definitely, I can tell it's different to watch it in real time than to watch it this way. If it's sped up enough, it just looks kind of like magic. Everything just kind of jumps onto the page. But when you see it in real time, you realize this is a little bit slower than you might think. The way I'm building out this drawing, and you'll be able to notice more about the mistakes I'm making, the choices I'm making, and that's nice to throw out there for you. Went to Memphis Comic Expo last weekend with Gary Bedell and Josh Metter, a couple clever kaiju artists, and we were at the Clever Kaiju booth, a nice 2-table corner booth. Showing off books by ourselves and other people in our community, and we had our portfolios and prints and stuff, and it was a great show. The best part was meeting other creators. I just appreciate that more than ever. There was a time when maybe I was newer, but I feel a shift even just recently. So even a year ago, I think I felt a little different at cons than I do now. I'm just, I'm really excited to meet creators, and it doesn't matter if they're brand new, if it's their first comic and it's pretty rough. I'm excited to meet people that are into the same thing I'm into, and I'm having good interactions with them. There's nothing, we're not trying to pitch each other anything. We're not, and my reactions are, good. It's not like if I see that their book, is not great in terms of depth of field perspective or something, my reaction is not, oh, like this isn't good. No, my reaction is just like, I'm looking for, where is this person trying to go? What's raw? What's special about them? And can I point those things out to them? Kind of the excitement, the admiring of what's at least raw in them and unpolished, which is possible if they're new, and hopefully invest a little something positive there for them. So that they leave the convention excited, motivated to keep going. And that's what I leave with too. I just left so excited and motivated. It was just wonderful. And it didn't matter if they were, pros or new people. It was all so good. And so much time talking about comics and like having these great conversations. I drew this page a few days after the convention, and it affected even the drawing of the page. Like in some sense, I was putting a little more effort into the anatomy and I was a little more careful than I typically am. And I think that was just from the energy, the libidinal, the life force energy that I got by engaging with others. And there's something just really electric, really, powerful about that. You need to engage with other creators if you're getting kind of like burnt out, like sitting doing this by yourself. Engage with some other people, get that life energy. And just, you'll notice just how much it impacts you. And when you have that energy behind your work, just how much it impacts the work. Like, it brings it to life more when you have that life energy. And you can get it from other people too, and other things. You could go rock climbing or whatever with some people. You could hang out with family. But you got to get that energy somewhere. So that was great. Also realized I want to do a lot more. I want to tap into that energy a lot more often. I might go to conventions more often, but that's not super realistic for me. But I need to do it online at least, and by phone and so on, by Zoom. So it's like, I'm kind of allergic to making posts on social media, to like going onto Discord and engaging. Like, there's something about it that's not very appealing, right? It doesn't feel very real. But after the in-person engagement that I had this past weekend, I was so motivated to jump on to Discord, to talk to and share with my community. Because I had all that life energy. I had that like social desire and that energy, that feeling that when I post, when I say something online, it's to real people. And that's a powerful thing. If you can get that feeling, if you can maintain that kind of view, then you're going to be able to reach out to people, and they're going to be excited by that energy. They're going to want to keep engaging, and it'll turn these very sterile and sometimes not very personal, intimate online conversations into real things. Like, it can be real conversations, but it requires that energy. It requires someone bring that to it. So I'm trying to do that, trying to keep that in mind. Clever Kaiju's Discord's a good one, our community. But yeah, we're trying to, and I say we because I know others feel the same, like especially the guys that came with me to the convention. We want to, really utilize community. Connect with some of these people we met online. Have them, teach us something they know about making comics or working in the industry or drawing, just whatever it is, and share some of those things, publicly, some just with our community. But it's exciting. And I got to keep that energy, because if I'm not careful, life is so busy, I'm just going to end up making these videos once a week and just getting stuck at home, not engaging very much. And there's ways I engage. I mean, I have in-person meetings with once a month with Clever Kaiju, and then we have once a week meetings actually with the founders, where we have to get some tasks done and plan some things and so on. But that's a little different than the kind of engagement I want to do more of on a regular basis. So right now I'm inviting some creators to, and I know I've got at least one guy that feels the same, to work on our elevator pitch. How do you describe your book to people at a convention. I mean, I was just there and I have to, oh, what's this book? I'm going to tell them very quickly what my book is. And that is something that I kind of struggle with. I never know what's the best way to say that. And, just a small example there of the kind of thing that we can, instead of me just sitting alone and figuring that out, I can get others to do the same thing and we can share it with each other, what we're coming up with, and see how people react and see what they would say about our book. That's the way to do it. And that can be done. This is kind of like talking about friends. It's great to have some friends where you can run it by them. But this is equally important. And it serves, it works better even, I think, when it's a community that's several people on the same page that are trying to do that instead of just, a friend. So, I'm looking forward to seeing what I come up with to define my book better. For example, this one, First Sun and Sword. I tell people it's, sword and sorcery adventure. It's a bit like Lone Wolf and Cub, but Cub is a 10-year-old rambunctious kid with superpower. And that seems somewhat accurate. It's really hard for me to know how I should describe it. There's definitely something fun-loving, swashbuckling about it. But there's a lot of action. I wouldn't necessarily call it violent. Like, all of these things have to be carefully chosen. If you say fantasy, was it high fantasy, low fantasy? Sword and sorcery means a certain thing. I could highlight the kind of biblical era or Bronze Age kind of feel to it. But you got to be careful because all of those mean something. Violence versus action. Violence sounds more gory. And would not be that accurate for this book. So, it's playful. There's fun interactions, banter between the characters. So it kind of has that buddy adventure kind of banter feel. But what are you going to say when you only have a few words? I could say a Bronze Age swashbuckling adventure with monsters, witches, mysteries. Words like that might be nice, It's not, there's the lizard men, but it's, it's not dragons. There's big bug monsters. There's like cryptids. There's going to be like labyrinths and lore and ancient stuff and, some sorcery stuff. But, how do you capture that? It's going to have a little bit of an Indiana Jones thing as we go too. This kind of going into ancient stuff and artifacts and Minotaur's maze and stuff like that. I could highlight the the kind of story there of Lone Wolf and Cub, but they're being hunted by lizard men in a Bronze Age world full of mysteries and violence, something like that. But despite being this far into the book, I haven't really settled on one way of describing it to people. It's not like I'm stumbling on my words when I talk to someone at a convention. It's just not clear to me the best way. So I'm going to work on that. I'm going to put some research into it and kind of think it through, share that with people, and come up with the best thing I can. And then, and I guess I'll share that with you all as well, what I come up with, what we come up with, and I'll help other people with that. But that's just one example. Things feel like they're getting going in the right direction. I love the Clever Kaiju Labs. We're wrapping up the comic book art class. There's still one class period left of that, and the painting class is wrapped up. And that's great. I love the class structure of learning, a curriculum together with other people. I've been in on the comic book one with Brian Atkins every week. And it's helpful. Yeah. But it's not, it's not all that it's not the only thing we're doing, or that I want to be a part of. The class structure is nice sometimes for certain purposes, right? But just sort of sharing and working on things together is awesome too. You'll see how much these blacks, when I drop in these final blacks, sometimes with lines and mostly with just filling in spots that have already been hatched in with the G pen, the nib. But this really starts to make the images more balanced, more complete. I really do try to have a complete image without the color having to do that. The values of the color should not be the only way that that the image works. So, and more so with the amount of lines I'm putting on here, it's getting where it could work in black and white very solidly. Not quite maybe just yet, but we're getting there. Yeah, this excitement, this life energy from hanging out with people. I just do not want to forget that feeling. And then, the idea of going in a path that excites you, doing what you love. I want to embrace that idea too. I was thinking about that this morning, to just really, to not get kind of burdened and encumbered in life and just kind of doing what you have to do, under pressure, finding the way, for doing comics, for example, how to do that in a way that you really enjoy. And that's what I'm doing here, is I'm trying to get this way of drawing pages and finishing pages that I enjoy, that's just fun. And to engage with creators in ways that's just fun, that I just enjoy. And like this video series, this is my chance to revisit my thoughts, revisit my work, think about what I'm doing. I'm just trying to do it in a way I enjoy. It can't just be discipline. I do think there's a component of that. There's some bitterness in every, love. You're gonna have some of that, and it's even a good thing. But I'm trying to move towards taking risk, putting myself out there, and getting rid of those burdens, the pressure. So yeah, that's it for this week. This was a longer video, and you got to see some real-time penciling, and then kind of the rest of that page. This page really wraps up that scene. That was a pretty long stretch, if you recall. The men showed up at the house that Sun and Sword were in, and Sun starts running away in the cart. That was the start of this kind of action sequence or scene, worked all the way to that climactic fight, and this is the resolution, bringing it back to the characters, to how they feel about each other, to what's changed between, for example, Farah and Sun. But if you recall, Karak, the man-eater, was also chasing to them. So it's not over. This is just like a slightly peaceful moment before things take off again, and we get into, the final scene, the final climactic stuff. And then we'll wrap it up, and this might take, we'll see, there might be 50 pages left, which would be a year if I don't speed up on doing it. We will just see how long it takes me to get there. Okay. See you next week.